This podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be considered medical or health advice. This podcast is not intended to replace professional medical advice, nor have the statements been evaluated by the US FDA or similar international bodies. We are not responsible for any losses, damages, or liabilities that may arise from the use of information shared during this podcast. The views expressed in this podcast may not be those of the host. Greetings, health and human enthusiasts, and welcome to the Regaining Health and Humanity podcast. I'm your trusted guide, Dr. Scott Johnson, and I'm both humbled and thrilled that you've chosen to join me on this fearless pursuit of knowledge and inspiration. My mission is to elevate your well-being naturally, arming you with evidence-based insights, revolutionary breakthroughs, and impactful health tactics. But that's not all. Together, we'll dive deep into the mysterious realms of human existence, unraveling the secrets of what makes us truly thrive. This podcast isn't just about information. It's a catalyst for change. Join me in confidently exploring potent natural solutions, cutting-edge health strategies, and igniting courageous conversations that cultivate meaningful connections and foster empathy for humankind. I'm here to empower you to unleash your extraordinary potential and lead a life jam-packed with boundless health and happiness. So get ready. Your extraordinary journey to boundless health and happiness starts now. Hello, listeners, and welcome to the Regaining Health and Humanity pod. I'm your host, Dr. Scott Johnson, and I'm super grateful you are joining us to listen. Recent research shows that only 1 in 14 Americans has optimal cardiometabolic health. Being overweight or obese is one of the greatest predictors for insulin resistance, meaning that the majority of Americans likely are dealing with this, many of whom don't even know it. So today's episode is going to explore how we can combat this crisis of insulin resistance naturally. In doing so, I've invited Dr. Mellissa Tulisano, who received her Bachelor of Science in Biomolecular Sciences from Central Connecticut State University, her Doctorate of Chiropractic from the University of Bridgeport, and her Certificate in Functional Medicine from Functional Medicine City. Dr. Tulisano's special focus includes functional medicine, blood work analysis, and nutrition. Functional medicine is personalized, systems-oriented model that empowers patients and practitioners to achieve the highest expression of health by seeing the underlying cause of disease, deficiency, and toxicity. In practice, she incorporates essential oils, homeopathic remedies, as well as diet and supplementation to create customized individual protocols for her patients. She also teaches women how to become a black belt health warrior as part of the Mama Bear Health Academy, where she shares tips on various health topics, including essential oils and dietary supplements. So it's my pleasure to welcome Dr. Tulisano, and thank you for your time to share with our listeners.
Thank you so much for having me. This is an absolute honor. I had the honor of actually reviewing one of your books and absolutely loved it. So I'm really looking forward to having this conversation. So thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, me too. I always enjoy the conversations because we always have good conversations with all the practitioners and the doctors and experts that come on. And so I particularly like this topic because I know that this is almost like a silent killer where so many people have insulin resistance and they don't even have any idea that they have it. And so first, let's talk about how does insulin resistance develop and what are its primary mechanisms within the body?
So insulin resistance really develops when your cells just become inefficient at pulling sugar out of the body. So what happens first of all, insulin is a hormone that is released by your organ called the pancreas. And it acts to regulate sugar metabolism. So when you eat a meal that has sugar, it has carbohydrates in it, your pancreas senses there's a rise in your blood sugar. And what it's going to do is it's going to release insulin out. What insulin does is it grabs the sugar out of the blood. It's going to put it in your liver for stored energy, your muscles for stored energy. What's left circulating around gets turned to fat most commonly. So because of our diet, our Western diet, high in carbs, high in sugars, that insulin hormone, it gets tired, it gets fatigued, and it really becomes inefficient at pulling that sugar out of the blood. So now it's just sitting in there longer. It's getting turned to fat more often than it is getting stored. And so this is what causes an actual insulin resistance. It just becomes tired. It's not being released as efficiently from the pancreas. And it's just not working great. So your sugars become elevated.
Yeah, I like that description. And I've often described insulin and blood sugar kind of like a lock and key mechanism where there's a lock in your cells, and the insulin is the key that fits in that lock to allow sugars to be absorbed and utilized by the cells. But if you start to develop this insulin resistance, your key is getting worn out. And so it's not unlocking properly. And eventually, when you become diabetic, really, it's almost like the key broke off in the cell.
That's such a great example.
You no longer have that ability to control those blood sugars.
Right. And something else that I did want to add is that it can also be called metabolic syndrome. So some people don't necessarily hear insulin resistance, and that's characterized by like elevated sugars, high blood triglycerides, so fats in your bloods, low good cholesterol, that HDL number, and then really just abdominal fat. So those are some key markers for insulin resistance as well.
Yeah. I'm glad you mentioned the connection there. One of the books I wrote recently was on gut health. And I think both you and I know that health really begins and ends in the gut. We need to put more emphasis on gut health.
Absolutely.
So could you explain the relationship between insulin resistance and gut health, and how does maybe the gut microbiome influence your sensitivity to insulin?
I've never really delved into this topic until doing research for this podcast, which was great. I love learning new things. So in the current literature, they're actually showing that carbohydrate metabolism is it's increased carbohydrate metabolism by the gut microbiome. And it's really playing a role with showing monosaccharides in the stool when the microbiome really isn't working. So that microbiome is going to consist of good and bad bacteria. And what really determines that lining and the gut integrity are two types. There's bacteroids and firmicutes. Those are two different types that really set the stage. And so they're going to tell you the integrity of what the gut is doing. When you have a diet that's got high sugars, and the diet's going to play a role in really telling you what's going on with the gut. And so when you have a diet that's got high in sugars and high in carbohydrates, that's going to increase inflammation, and it's going to put really stress on those bacteria that are trying to metabolize those sugars. And that's what their role is. So just like insulin gets fatigued, these bacteria also don't really know how to work really great when that happens. And so not only in that lining are the good bacteria, but there's also an immune system part of your gut lining that's also going to play a role. So when that lining becomes raw and red and irritated, now you're losing not only integrity of that gut function, but also the immune system part of the gut that's lying there. So you're setting the stage for inflammation, for immune system dysfunction. And it really is like the perfect storm for insulin resistance to exist. Fiber is something that stabilizes the gut microbiome and really allows for a lot of diversity while also decreasing those sugars. So it's really important for that to be there. There's also lipopolysaccharides. So what those are is they really help to stabilize and reduce inflammation as well as promote immune system function. So all of these things are important for really gut function. And when you have a diet that's high in sugar, high in inflammation, that good bacteria starts to decrease. Now your gut stabilization is out of balance. The gut lining doesn't work. You're losing immune system function. Now your sugars aren't being related. That's happening by those good bacteria that's in your gut as well. So just like insulin gets fatigued, those bacteria get fatigued, and it's just setting the stage for that insulin resistance to really start. And that was something that was interesting to me, because you think of insulin resistance as really blood blood, not pulling the sugar out of the blood, putting it where it needs to go. But its correlation and having a root cause in the gut, I think, is being missed by a lot of practitioners. And I truly like to specialize in gut dysfunction first. I like to really correct that piece of it because just like you and reading your books as well, I find that that is the source of dysfunction. And when you reset that piece, you give the body the reins to do what it knows innately how to do in terms of healing your body. So patients with this insulin resistance are going to have fewer really good gut flora, which again is disrupting that sugar metabolism and really destabilizing that gut lining. And so again, it's just setting the stage. It just really sets the stage for that root cause.
Yeah, I'm glad that you're connecting the inflammation with the blood sugar because those things are so well associated and connected. I mean, that's just irrefutable. We know those are highly connected. And those are two of the most important things to address if you want to have good health.
Absolutely.
You've got to balance your blood sugar and you have to have a normal inflammatory response. So much of that is driven by the health of your gut. I would say that without exception, every person that I talked to in the clinic today that I saw, I talked to them about their gut health. And we talked about ways we can correct some of the things that are going on. And initially people are often, well, I'm having something happening that's not gut related. Why are you talking to me about the gut? And you have to talk to them about, hey, yeah, 70% of your immune system's there. You have so many neurotransmitters are created in your gut. Your inflammatory response is almost entirely controlled by your gut. And so there's so many things that are happening within the gut that are going to affect things that may not seem like they're related, but they are.
Right. I have the same conversations with my patients. It's every day we talk about the gut.
You mentioned good and bad bacteria that are going to be within the gut. And we definitely want to have more good than bad because when you have more bad, then that's when some challenges start to occur.
Absolutely.
What role does small intestinal bacterial overgrowth or SIBO play in exacerbating insulin resistance? And what are some common symptoms to look out for?
This is a great question. And it's something that I see so often in practice, especially in patients that have lingering symptoms, not even just with blood sugar, but absolutely with blood sugar, especially recently. So to start off with SIBO, there's that gut-brain connection, and really being driven by your vagus nerve. It's a nerve that starts in your brain, sends a branch down to really control your heart, and all of your abdominal organs, I really should say. And it's autonomic, which a play on words is automatic. You don't control it. So when that nerve system part of your gut, that brain connection doesn't work really great, your small bowel can slow down. Oftentimes I see this initiate when digestion is not really working super great. So you're not digesting your food really well. That undigested food is going through your tract. It's feeding this good and bad bacteria. And there's a skew in that ratio. You should have a little bit of bad, a lot of good, and then it shifts. And so when that SIBO disrupts that microbiome, that balance that's there, and that good bacteria that's responsible for metabolizing your sugars in your diet, or helping to metabolize your sugars in your diet, aren't really working super great, you end up getting really a weakened intestinal lining. So now this invasive bacteria can even escape out. Excuse me. And so that just feeds that inflammation that's occurring in your gut as well. So SIBO is just adding to that inflammation. It's disrupting the gut microbiome, which is responsible for helping your sugar metabolism, like we said before. And it's just feeding that environment for insulin resistance to exist. Symptoms that are most common, I won't just say they are just these symptoms, a lot of times can be malnutrition, where you're not getting absorption of nutrients appropriately. You get bloating, stomach distension, cramping. You can have disruption in your bowels, and these symptoms can ebb and flow. And I've seen that happen where patients will improve with gut function, and then all of a sudden it decides to go a little haywire. And that's when we're looking at other advanced testing to really isolate what's going on with that bad bacteria that's there. The SIBO again, it's a disruption in that microbiome that's playing a role in really setting the stage for the sugars to be dysregulated.
Yeah, so you mentioned the gut integrity issues, and the reality is that what we call leaky gut is almost ubiquitous in the current human population because of the way we eat and the things that we're exposed to on a regular basis.
Absolutely.
It's not just do you not, or do you have it? It is what level of the spectrum of it you have.
Exactly.
Are you on the lower end, or are you the higher end? You somewhere in between, and we need to address that to get people back to the correct health.
Absolutely.
Are there specific dietary or foods that can contribute to insulin resistance, or conversely, those that might help mitigate it?
Absolutely. So again, we go back to diet and we're looking at your sugar intake. And so obviously excess sugar consumption, looking at really simple carbohydrates. So your breads, your pastas, even just sugar in general, all those carbohydrates, not your fruit sugars, they just absolutely put stress on your body in terms of, again, that insulin hormone. Inflammation, oxidative stress, where you have free radicals circulating around, causing damage to cells. Again, increasing inflammation. Anything that's going to increase that inflammation can definitely contribute to insulin resistance. Inactivity. When you're looking at physical activity and you're not moving, you're not stimulating your gut to move, you're not stimulating that good microbiome. And it can also contribute to poor gut function in itself. Even eating excessively. So like massive consumption of foods as opposed to like watching and balancing your macronutrients and eating when you're not hungry. So often these simple carbohydrates, they spike your sugars, insulin rushes out, and then they plummet. And so your brain is like, what just happened to my sugar levels? I need to eat more, when realistically you haven't even digested the food that you've just eaten. So all of those things and habits can lead to just insulin resistance or even just poor sugar regulation. And some things that can help mitigate it. And what I like to talk about with my patients is really incorporating meals that have a fiber, a fat, and a protein. So what are those? So like your good fats, like coconut oils and olive oils and avocado oils, really looking at one country of origin as well, so that you know you're getting purity in terms of those oils. Chia seeds, flax seeds, nuts, those are all great sources of fat. Fiber, that kind of overlaps where you get your vegetable intake, your cruciferous vegetables, your flax, your beans. They help to regulate your sugars and lower your insulin levels. And then proteins, which help to stabilize your hunger and also stabilize your blood sugars. They don't have to be meat. They could be vegetable sources of protein like beans, and tofu or lean meats if you're using that. So those are all good things that I like that help incorporate with patients when talking about diet and in terms of blood sugars.
Yeah. Oh, great tips. The macros are so important, what you're looking at as far as healthy fats and proteins and how many carbs you're intaking, because the American diet is full of a lot of garbage, and it's a lot of unhealthy fats and a lot of empty calorie carbs. And so
right. Absolutely.
I always, inevitably, everything that we talk about on this podcast comes back to lifestyle, because we generally are a reflection of our lifestyle. Our health is a general reflection of our lifestyle.
Absolutely.
So I want to kind of continue that discussion a little bit more. You did mention diet and exercise, but are there other factors such as stress, your sleep quality, those kind of things that might impact insulin sensitivity?
Absolutely. I think when looking at stress, you're really disrupting that gut-brain connection. When you're stressed, your digestive system naturally slows down. You're in a sympathetic tone, that fight or flight. When you're running away from that tiger, or that epic example, you're not worried about digesting your food. So things commonly slow down. Your stomach acid decreases, your digestion decreases, your absorption decreases. So this all affects the way that your gut function. And then you add inflammatory foods to that, and now you're really driving inflammation and just gut dysfunction as well. This is what really helps to lead to that SIBO production, that small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. But something else that stress also does is it raises your blood sugar levels. I had a patient chiropractically who went to the ER with low back pain. It is a type 2 diabetic, regulated by multiple medications. And I saw her with her blood work that was from the hospital, and being regulated by meds, her sugars were in the 300s. So just stress alone can absolutely disrupt your sugar metabolism. And stress also increases cortisol levels. So you're looking at, that can increase your blood sugar levels. So just with that stress response alone, you're getting elevated blood sugars. Sleep. And when you're looking at sleep, this is where the body heals. And so you're taking in all those nutrients that you've taken in during the day. And now your body's going to use them to rebuild proteins and rebuild cells and just help that body heal. And if you're unable to sleep and reach that good REM cycle, you're not going to be able to really assimilate and get what you need, really do what you need to do in healing your body. And when you're upsetting that gut dysfunction, it's not allowed to heal that gut lining, you're just adding to the probability of insulin resistance developing if your sugar intake is obviously elevated. It also increases inflammatory markers and immune system markers. So you're not able to regulate those systems either. And then too little sleep can actually increase growth hormone, and growth hormone can dysregulate your blood sugars as well. You're looking at exercise. So in terms of lifestyle, that helps to improve gut motility, peristalsis, because that all happens by itself. And aerobic and resistant exercises at least 3 times a week have been shown to reduce your blood sugar levels. So all of those things can really help mitigate blood sugars when you're taking them into consideration.
Yeah, there's some very compelling evidence for exercise alone to increase your insulin sensitivity after a meal. If you just go for a 10 to 15 minute brisk walk after a meal, that can significantly increase your insulin sensitivity and reduce the amount of glucose that you have in your blood after a meal. So so many lifestyle things that we can do to improve our overall health, and including insulin sensitivity.
Definitely.
Now we kind of get to the fun part that people really like to, the secrets and the tips and strategies. What are some natural approaches or alternative therapies that have shown promise in reversing insulin resistance?
So one of them is definitely obviously looking at diet. So we want to obviously reduce your sugar intake, but doing that alone is not, you're going to get to a certain level. That has to be a piece of it. So supplementing your sweets, if you're a sweet tooth person, with fruit. So if you're craving sweets in the evening, like grabbing fruit instead for as a replacement. Making sure, again, that touching on that fat, that fiber, and that protein, and making sure that those are incorporated in your meals so that you are satiated and that you feel like your body is full, so your sugars stay regulated. I like to, again, my niche is kind of healing that gut dysfunction and stabilizing the gut first. And so I like to do that and really looking at digestion, correcting digestion, and then really mitigating SIBO if that is something that is there, and helping that gut restore its optimal function so that we are addressing the root where insulin resistance can be hiding. And so we want to remove that bad bacteria. We want to repopulate that good bacteria and restore that gut integrity. Because if we're storing the gut integrity, that microbiome, the immune system, we're reducing inflammation, then the likelihood that insulin resistance can stay around reduces drastically.
Yeah, foundationally, you need to get that digestion working, because that'll lead us kind of into my next question about dietary supplements and things that you can do that way. But you can't, if you don't have your digestion working properly, you're not going to absorb those. You're not going to get the maximum benefits out of these supplements that we take. So it's definitely a multifaceted process, and you need to start with the foundation and then move into these things that you can do supplement wise. And so that does directly come into my next question, which is, are there specific herbs, supplements, probiotics, prebiotics that can support gut health and potentially improve insulin sensitivity?
Absolutely. And it really truly depends on where the patient's starting from, where I like to start from in terms of treatment. But something I commonly use in resetting digestion are some digestive enzymes. If stress is definitely a factor that's at play, disrupting the gut, making sure that a patient is digesting properly so they can absorb and assimilate those nutrients that they need to. Another one is consuming good omega fatty acids from a high quality source. So whether that is from supplementation, whether that's from your diet with some good wild caught fish. So really helping getting those balance of omegas so that you can help reduce inflammation, not just in a gut, from a gut perspective, but also systemically all over the body. So that's something I also like to do. Some herbs that are great at regulating sugars, berberine has been shown to help do that in lowering sugar levels down, even magnesium in some cases and helping to restore. Also, gymnema is another herb that I've used with some patients as well. Even in terms of cinnamon, whether that's in essential oil form or also in supplement form, has also been shown to regulate your sugars. And even in terms of cleanses in some instances with patients, again, that really depends. I like to use blood work to kind of tell me where I need to start. And so with a patient, I may not necessarily start with a cleanse, but that might be something as well.
Personalized medicine play into this? I mean, can you discuss a little bit about the importance of personalized medicine in addressing insulin resistance and even maybe gut-related issues?
Absolutely. It's not a one size fits all. You really do have to get a great history of the patient, kind of see where they're starting from, what their childhood looked like in terms of even antibiotic use that could have disrupted the gut, and really look to and gather information to see where their deficiencies and functions lie, and then looking to see where you need to start, what's going to be the most beneficial. So in terms of personalized, you really want to work with somebody who will listen to you, and that's a really important in terms of finding a practitioner. And I've had so many patients that I've worked with previously that want to jump to diet, and I'm changing my diet and I'm moving and I'm not seeing the results that I want to see from a blood sugar perspective or even from a physique perspective. And you really just can't chase the symptoms. You have to look for those root causes. And like I said previously, in my practice, I really like to start with the gut. And what I've noticed is that restoring that function, the body has the innate ability to heal. And when given that push in the right direction and correcting the gut, the body really knows what to do. And that's when you correct the gut, you can really give those other supplements that we just talked about, even in terms of those probiotics, which I forgot to mention previously too, and restoring that gut microbiome, you're going to see a benefit when you do things in phases. So it's not just that magic pill that someone can give you just to say, okay, it'll just fix it in one fell swoop. You really do have to heal that gut in phases in order to get your body to do what it needs to do.
Yeah, I'm glad you talked about finding the right healthcare practitioner, because you do need to find somebody who's willing to listen to you and willing to let you do health your way. And if you don't have that individual, then I tell people to fire that individual and go find somebody else, because there will be somebody out there who will be supportive of your choices and the way that you want to attack the issues that you're having with your health. Can we maybe just end? Do you have some tips or some things that you can share how people can work with their healthcare professionals to create comprehensive plans for managing insulin resistance through lifestyle modifications and natural interventions, and maybe what they should be asking their healthcare professionals when they go for a visit?
Absolutely. I mean, so seeking out a more holistic practitioner, now whether that be a functional medicine practitioner, a naturopath, I have patients that work with multiple, including myself, which I actually love because some practitioners can do things that I can't do. And so really finding your group of practitioners that are going to fit your needs specifically. But giving a detailed history, I find, is really, really important in helping to guide the patient where they need to go. And so many just seek out a nutritionist and want to change their diet. And so often you see that the patient's sugars may drop, but then they stall. And so if that practitioner is not really helping you reach your health goals, then you really have to go and find somebody who is. So just like you said, seeking out a different practitioner. But this may involve just more advanced testing as well. It really just depends on where you're starting from. So working with someone to gather information. So there is a stage where you gather, you give a practitioner your history. You're going to tell them all of the details that you need to in regards to your past medical history, your current medical history. And then there becomes a gathering stage in which you gather information in order to direct care. So that may involve minor testing to begin with, and then it may go into more advanced testing in terms of gut testing, where you can look at stool analysis and you can look at other types of metabolic analysis as well. And there is also too an emotional component to this that I've worked with patients, and so sometimes that involves a therapist, and sometimes to helping them work through their emotions medications as they go through this process as well, because if they're not dealing with their stress, then that can impact their gut, which again, like we talked about this whole podcast, it impacts your insulin resistance. So it is really important to gather not only your group of professionals, but gathering all that information in order to really get the care that you need. And again, it's not a one size fits all. It's going to take time. It's going to involve patience, and it's going to really, and your success is going to be determined by your ability to have all of those pieces really aligned. So you can reach out to specific, there's practitioners, even functional medicine practitioners that work just with metabolic patients. Most do have a lot of experience with any other practitioner as well. It just depends on where you're aligned. Are you more holistic? Are you not? And really not kind of putting your hand in more than one pot as well. I find that with some of my patients, they like to kind of reach for anything they possibly can. And it makes it really difficult to treat them when they have their hands in so many different pots. And so sometimes I have that conversation with them and say, okay, you cross your T's and dot your I's and do what you need to do first. And I will be here for you when you need me. So I feel like definitely finding those people that align with your health perspective is really, really important. I know I do that with my family and aligning practitioners that align with my belief. And doing that is, I think, the first thing. You have to be comfortable with who you're seeking out.
Yeah, those are all great tips. And this has been an enlightening conversation about something that I feel is a topic that most people can benefit from. In fact, everyone can, because everyone has to be able to keep their insulin sensitivity and manage their blood glucose. But there are a vast majority of the population that needs to put more emphasis on this. And so I hope that people will take this to heart, and they will consider some of the options that are available to them and find a practitioner who's going to listen to them and help them to improve their health by improving their insulin resistance. So thank you so much for being on and sharing with us.
You are very welcome. It was my pleasure to have this conversation.
Thank you for investing your precious time with us today. I trust you've uncovered valuable insights to elevate your health and enhance your quality of life. If you're hungry for more evidence-based wisdom to transform your well-being, I invite you to check out my 20-plus books, all waiting to be explored on my website, authorscott.com. Don't miss out on the chance to supercharge your knowledge. Please share, like, and subscribe to be part of the movement revolutionizing lives. In a world drowning in noise and endless information, your share can be the beacon that guides others to a better life. Together, let's make a difference by amplifying the life-changing knowledge you've gained today. Until next time, here's to your journey to boundless health and unbridled happiness.